Table 8.1 shows the total number of plant species, the total number of insect species, and the number of habitats in 3 areas. So the question asks us to identify the area with the highest biodiversity. So what do you mean by area with highest biodiversity? So you've learned that biodiversity, right? There are 3 levels of looking at biodiversity. First one is ecosystem or habitat diversity. And the second one is the species diversity. And species diversity is a composition of both species richness and species evenness. Okay. Species richness means how many different types of species you have. Species evenness means for each species that you have, the number is more or less around that range, not some too many and some very few. Okay, species evenness. And the third one is the genetic diversity. So this is the basic we've learned. For this question, number of habitats means the ecosystem diversity. So this value here is important for us to look at the ecosystem diversity. So it looks like number 12 is the highest in number among all the 3 areas. Okay, and then for these 2 is talking about total number of species of plant and insect. So total number of species means species richness. So this one is telling us about the species diversity component of biodiversity. So you can see that for C, 3, 6, 2, and 70 is the highest, okay, for the number of plant species and insect species. So all in all, you can see that area C will have got the highest biodiversity. So area C will have the highest biodiversity. So why is it area C got the highest biodiversity? Hang on, paper 41. Question 8. So we say that because they've got the highest number of habitat, right? And number 2, we've got the highest number of plant as well as the and insect species, or highest species richness. So that's the second and third answer, okay, for this question. Next, identify the area that's most likely to be affected if the environment changes. Give a reason for your choice of area. So this is very interesting. They say that, okay, when the environment changes, which of these 3 areas will be most likely to be affected? Okay, affected means what? We are looking at these 3 data, these 3 different kind of data here. Right, you're talking about the plant species, total number of different plant species, total number of different insect species, and the total number of habitats here. So they say that when the environment changes, which area will have the most impact, will get the most impact. So what are the theory that they've learned to help you to answer this question? Okay. So is it A, B, or C? Now let's talk about when you have got more plant. Okay. So let's talk about A. A got the least biodiversity, right? So let's say, for example, I give you an extreme condition first. In this habitat, there's only one type of habitat. In this area, only one type of habitat. So when the environment changes, let's say sunlight changes, rainfall changes, temperature changes, the entire habitat will be affected, right? So first, let's say sunlight changes. It becomes very cold, less sunlight. So the plant, all the leaves will fall away. Let's say winter time, right? And this plant is actually a food for the herbivore in this area. So all the herbivores in extreme condition here, okay, will be feeding on the plant. So when there's no leaf, they have no food to eat. So the number of herbivores will drop. Okay. Then after that, the carnivores. Okay. Carnivores also depend on the herbivore. So when the food in the carnivores have got less, then the food in the, when the herbivores number drop, the carnivores numbers also will drop. Okay. So in an extreme condition, what you can see here is if a biodiversity of an area is very small, the food chain is very simple. So a slight change in the environmental condition can affect any member of the food chain, and that will affect the rest of the member in the food chain. So all of them will actually be affected, right? If an ecosystem has got many different type of, if an area have got many different type of habitats, what happened is that, so apart from this plant, I've got some maybe shrubs or grass, okay, or some other kind of plants here. So this will be able to feed on other type of herbivores. So let's say, for example, this is A, herbivore A, right? And then I may have got herbivore B that feed on this plant, herbivore C that feed on this plant, and herbivore D that feed on this plant. So I've got B, C, D, B and C and D. So then this carnivore will have got more choices of food because it can feed on not only A, but B and C and D are also food for the carnivore. So what is good about this, this food web, a more complex food web, is that when herbivore A is no longer present, carnivore can still get food from herbivore B, C, and D. So this particular food web will be least affected compared to if you only have got the first choice, there only one food chain and there's no food web. So therefore, among the three areas, which one is the most affected when the environment change is actually area A, because you learn that when there's least biodiversity, the chances of survival becomes less. Okay. So answer is A. Reason is because there is less species richness. So if the one species decrease in number, it will affect other species in the food chain. It will affect all other species in the food chain, all other species. Okay. So this because it got less species richness. Okay. So that's the answer. So C, state one reason why it is important to conserve biodiversity in all three areas. So this is, they're asking you, remember this is your theory. Why do we need to conserve the biodiversity? There are many, many answers that are possible here. So if you go back to your notes and refer to, so this is from the syllabus that you've learned about the reason to maintain biodiversity. So therefore the answers that you can write there will be these 5 points here. That means moral and ethical reasons, ecological reasons, aesthetic reasons, social and commercial reasons, and other services that you can get from this ecosystem. So moral and ethical reason is that we want to actually maintain the biodiversity so that it can be passed on to the future generations. So this for ethical consideration. Whatever that's given to us on Earth now to take care, we need to take care so that whatever we have now can be passed on to the next generation to enjoy. Okay, and ecological reason is because we want to, so for ecological reason is because we want to maintain the genetic diversity and therefore genetic variation of all the species we can find. So we want to maintain genetic diversity and genetic variation of the species. So we want to maintain all different kinds of species as well as all different kinds of variation in species, because we know that variation is the raw material for natural selection. Okay, what do you mean by raw material for natural selection? Now, it means to say that we want to ensure that all species on Earth will survive, okay, regardless of the changes in the selection pressure. Means the environmental condition can change with time. So no matter how the environmental condition changes, we want to ensure that there be some allele that can code for phenotype that allow some individuals of the species to survive so that the whole species will continue to survive on Earth. So therefore, ecological reason means we need to maintain the species diversity, a genetic diversity or genetic variation, okay, to ensure the survival of all species on Earth. So their survival in turn will maintain the ecosystem stability. It means all organisms survive. So it maintain the ecosystem stability here, right? Ecosystem, ecological stability or ecosystem stability. So this is the second thing you can talk about. Then the third thing you can talk about is aesthetic reason. Aesthetic reason means, aesthetic means when you look at something, it looks beautiful. And when it looks beautiful, you feel good about it. So one of the ways for you to de-stress is maybe you go around the lakeside early morning or in the evening and sit there and let the wind blow, look at the ducks, okay, and look at the sea, look at the lake, the water movement, and the sunset. So that actually helps you to relax and clear your mind. So when you become relaxed, suddenly whatever issues that you have a solution to that, or you become more positive, you recollect yourself able to continue to strive, okay? So that is what the nature can give to us, aesthetic aspect. And another aesthetic aspect is you can make the place for ecotourism. Ecotourism means tourists go there to look at the nature of the ecosystem. And then with that, you can protect the place as well as you can earn some money because they have to pay maybe tax. Okay, when they go to the area and maybe they stay in a hotel in a nearby area, the hotel will have to impose certain fee, or they go to area to buy tickets to enter, so entrance fee to help to maintain the area by employing the people to take care of the place. Okay, and yeah, so that is an aesthetic reason. Next is social and commercial reasons. What are the things that you can get from this area that is useful for us? For example, future medicines, some food, the meat, some spices, okay, some textiles. So this is the social and commercial reasons we can get from there. And other services that are very important, you know that forest is a carbon sink, means that it will absorb the CO2 and release the oxygen. So our green lungs, okay? And it is also an area to recycle the organic component back to inorganic component. It supports a balanced water cycle because only when there's plant, transpiration will happen, there's cloud, and there's cloud, there's rain. right? So this is very important. So maintain a balanced water cycle. And then we've got all the insects that can survive to help to pollinate, and therefore the plants will continue to grow. So balanced cycle. So these are the 5 points that you want to talk about when they ask you about why do we need to maintain the biodiversity. So that's the question that they ask you, and this is the answer you can write. Okay. So they only want one reason, right? Which is very easy. What if they ask you for a 5-mark question or essay question? Okay, you can still able to write. Okay, so that's for the first question we want to discuss. The next question is paper 40. I don't think it's paper 42. Okay, paper 42, question 9B. Okay, paper 42, question 9B is this essay question here. This is an essay question. I think it's very important for you to learn. That's why I've selected it. So the question asks the student to outline how degraded habitats may be restored with reference to named examples. Okay, how degraded habitats may be restored with reference to named examples. Now, if you go back to your theory to retrieve what you have learned about restoration of degraded habitats, the most is maybe you get 3 marks, but this question is 7 marks. Now, why is it the most you get 3 marks? Is because if you go back to the notes for habitat restoration, right, which is this one here. Okay, we start off with, okay, this is a learning outcome. We start off with restoring degraded habitat. Example is planting trees on agricultural land that you no longer use, replanting mangrove in the Sundarban. So you can give this one as an example. You can also get 1 mark for replanting trees. So 2 marks. Okay. Then another example, because they want at least a plural for the example, you can say, okay, replanting of trees in Haiti. So the most marks you can get is 3 marks, but it's an essay question. So how are you going to get the rest of the marks to get to 7 marks? Then you go back to the question and see, what else can I write here? It's talking about degraded habitats, right? Degraded habitats. So what else can I talk about so that I can get the marks? So first thing is degraded habitats. So that means a habitat has degraded. So what else you have learned in your syllabus is the threats to terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem. What are the activities that humans have done that leads to the threats, means degradation to the habitats? So you have to go to that area to find out the other possible answers that you can write. So let's look at the threats to habitats. No. This is what, okay. Here. Okay, the threats to ecosystem. Here. Am I recording? Yes. Okay, so this is what you have learned about the threats to biodiversity. So we say that the habitat is degrading. Is habitat part of the biodiversity? Yes, it is, right? Because one of the level of measuring biodiversity is habitat diversity. Okay, and the habitat is degrading. So the biodiversity is degrading. So what are the 5 things that humans have done that leads to degradation of habitat? And what we can do about these 5 actions in order to restore those areas. So we can look at that one, right? So what we have done that causes degradation of habitat. Number 1, habitat loss and degradation of environment. So that means to say habitat is lost because we chop down the trees or because of deforestation. Okay, so hang on, resume. So if we have chopped down the forests or chopped down the plants and causing that habitat to be degraded, of course, what we need to do is to restore it is to do replanting of trees to that habitat or reforestation. So that will resolve this issue. All right. And not only that, when we chop down the trees, deforestation, what happened to those animals? The animals don't have shelter, they may not have food, and they may die. So the numbers would also drop. So when we plant the trees back to the area, remember the role of the zoo. So the role of the zoo is captive breeding, as well as research, as well as reintroduce the animals back to the wild. So we want to reintroduce the native animals back to the habitat. So we do the replanting of the plants and we reintroduce the animals to the area. So that will resolve threats number 1, the effect due to threats number 1. Now, climate change is a result of number 1. So as long as we restore number 1, we will restore number 2. That is replantation of the trees and reforestation. Okay. Now, threat number 3 that causes degradation of the habitat is man-made pollutants. Man-made pollutants, basically there are 2 types. The first one is fertilizers, and the second one is the effluent from industry and domestic houses. Remember, effluent is the word that I've introduced to you. Effluent are the wastewater, the waste material that come out from the domestic means house, the house where we live, as well as industrial means the factory. So this is the effluent. So 2 types of pollutants, fertilizers and effluents. Okay, so what are the effects of these 2 chemicals to our soil when we put it into the soil, as well as when it rains, it goes to the water, or we release it to the water directly. So they become the effluent. Sorry, they become chemicals in the water. So what is the effect of the fertilizer? Remember, the fertilizer will lead to eutrophication, and eutrophication is suddenly there's a lot of the nutrients NPK. Okay, usually fertilizer supply NPK. So eutrophication is suddenly too much NPK, and therefore it leads to algae bloom, right? So algae bloom on the surface of the river, surface of the lake, and then the sunlight cannot penetrate the water. So all the aquatic plants at the bottom of the riverbed and the bottom of the lake will actually die, cannot photosynthesize. And then the fishes that depend on them also die, and there's a lot of decomposition that's happening. So because of that, the pH of the water becomes very acidic. Okay, and why? Because there are a lot of bacteria that start to decompose, so a lot of CO2 has been released, so very acidic. And also pH becomes acidic. Okay. Lack of oxygen. Why? Because during decomposition, bacteria need to produce a lot of ATP to carry out the processes. So a lot of oxygen has been taken up for respiration. So very lack of oxygen in this aquatic environment. So this is the effect, okay, of fertilizer on the river, in the river and the lake. So when these fertilizers are being washed away, okay, so that's effect of the fertilizer. And effect of the effluent are all the toxic chemicals, okay, and when they are released into the water, it will affect the survival of maybe the fish. It may actually reduce their immune system, becomes weakened, or they become infertile. All right, so the effect of toxic chemicals on them. So this is what we have done, the action of human onto the habitat. So for those kind of actions, how do we restore? How do we restore the habitat? Okay, for those lake with pH problem and lack of oxygen problem, so we can restore them by number 3, oxygenate the lake or the river. Okay, oxygenate the lake or the river by maybe pumping bubbling oxygen directly to the water. All right. And what about the pH? Normalizing the pH of the water or the soil if it becomes acidic because of certain chemicals that we use. So you can normalize pH of water or soil using some mild basic chemicals like hydrogen carbonate, sodium hydrogen carbonate, say for example. Okay, so add them into the water, add them to the soil to normalize the pH. So that is for the eutrophication issue. Whereas for the effluent issue, you may want to purify the water, okay, of the lake and the river. You want to purify. Okay. Purify means to say that you may need to actually let the water flow to a certain area where you can let them pass through rocks and then sand, okay, pebbles to filter all the solid waste material, and then let them pass through maybe an area where the bacteria will remove all the DOM, dead organic matter. And after that, only release the clear water back to the river. So that's one of the way to purify the water. Okay. And also, you may also remove the waste from the water. So for example, you know, the seaside, I've introduced to you that there's so many rubbish that we throw at the seaside, like plastic bags, lighter, cover of the mineral water bottles, okay, plastic spoon and all these things. All these are the waste. So, and then this waste may threaten the aquatic organisms, right, you know. So you want to actually remove the waste directly, right? Even the ships, right, with oil spillage that will pollute the sea. So you also want to clean away the oil spill. So this is called removing the waste directly. Okay, so that is to handle threat number 3. Now, threat number 4 is overexploitation, means you remove things faster than they can grow back. So the population size cannot be maintained at a constant number, and they keep on going down. Okay, so this is called overexploitation. So how to ensure we got a sustainable use of resources from the terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem? We have to replanting of trees. Okay, that's one of them. Or you ensure that, okay, when you want to chop down the trees for timber, you must ensure that for this particular species of plant that you want to chop down, it must, the tree trunk, the main tree trunk must reach certain diameter, and then only above this diameter you can chop down. So this is one of the criteria. But this one you cannot write as an answer because we are talking about restoring. We are not talking about chopping down the trees. So even though this is a point, you cannot write. Okay, this is a point for sustainable use of resources. Trees that you want to chop down must reach certain size. Fish that you want to catch must reach a certain size. So the net that you use to catch the fish must be at least certain size. It cannot be smaller than a certain size, because when you have a very small size, you catch all the fish, whether they're mature or they're immature, you catch all of them. Then you've got no more fish left to grow back the numbers. So the fish net must be at above certain size so that the younger fish can actually not be trapped by the net. Okay, so that is called for sustainable use of resources. But for restoration of the habitat, the only answer we can give is replanting back of the trees. How many trees you chop down is how many trees you have to plant back. Okay, now don't forget the alien species also will cause degradation of the habitat. Right, so therefore, what you want to do here is you want to remove. So number 7, remove the alien species that you have introduced to the area for maybe biological control. Right, you remove the toad to control the cane beetle, and the toad becomes a nuisance. Okay, So it starts to put a trait on the plants. You put a trait from other animals. Even the snake also can die, okay, cannot feed on them because that's very toxic. So you want to remove the alien species by culling. Remember the word culling means killing the organisms because they have grown too big or because they are defective. So you do culling to remove them, okay? So sustainable use of resources, one of them you can write is you want to protect the area from grazing. Okay, protect the area from grazing is actually a way of sustainable use of resources. Let's say you have got cattle that you want them to graze in the grassland. So you don't allow them to graze in every grassland. You have to maybe fence up a particular grassland that is not grazed. So you're actually protecting the area from grazing. So that once they finish grazing one place, you bring them to this place and allow the other place to actually go back. So, okay. So you got 8 points to write on how you can restore back a degraded area. Then of course, point number 9 and 10, you give the 2 examples lah. Right, replanting the mangrove in the Sundarban area and replanting of trees in the high tea. So these will be 2 examples that will give you maximum 2 marks, okay? Maximum 2 marks for the example, right? So I've shown you how you can derive to the answer for this question. Now, this is very interesting to see a fill in the blank question in the A2 paper, which is very, very rare. Okay, so when this kind of question is asked, right, let me say that you really need to know this particular topic in this passage very well, then only you can answer. So which means to say that you have to learn up all the things in your syllabus to prepare for your exam. You cannot skip, like, hopefully they don't ask an exam. Okay, hopefully, you cannot hopefully, yeah. So to be sure you can score as high as possible, try to cover all your syllabus, okay? So let's do this question. This is very easy. A student estimate the population size of an animal species using mark recapture, mark release. I already give you the answer. Mark release recapture technique, right? So this one everyone. Okay. This can only be used for dash animals such as mice. What is the dash animals there? Mutu?
Highly mobile.
Again?
Highly mobile.
Yes, very good. So it's mobile. Huh? So highly mobile organism. And in the mark scheme, they say that small animal. Okay, small animal. So we can capture using this method. So usually you remember the one that I've shown you, birds, lizards, and fish. Cow is different thing. Cow, the mark there is for the farmers to actually know and identify different individuals. So that was not mark release capture, okay? Next. So the student caught a sample of mice using humane traps. Very interesting. Humane trap means it doesn't cause harm to the animals, right? So the student marked the mice in a way that did not dash them. What is dash them, Jessamine? Harm them. Very easy, right? You cannot harm them, huh? Okay. For example, the mark did not make them more visible to potential what? Potential what? Kong you. Or Kong you what? Kong you what you are? What is you? You. Tian you, yes. Tian you?
Potentially harmed by other predators.
Predators, yes. So predators? Predator, okay. Yes, answer is predator. Very easy, right? Okay. So the student released the marked mice and left enough time for them to randomly dash with the population. Randomly dash with the population, Sean? Mixed. Okay, can you see this question? It's so easy, huh? All right. So the students then caught a second sample of the mice and noted the numbers of marked and unmarked mice. So the student estimate the population size by multiplying the number of mice in the first sample by the number in the second sample, and then dividing by the number of what mice in the second sample. What mice is that, Bryce?
Number of marked.
Yes, marked. Okay, there you go. You have actually been able to answer this question in 6 marks. So it's very easy, right? But provided that you have actually learned up this part well. So from this question, we actually understand that you need to learn all things covered by your syllabus so that at least you answer this question, you get 6 marks. Okay. So with that, we have completed the selection questions to revise chapter 18, which is biodiversity, classification, and conservation. There are more questions in the past years that ask about the classification, which I find is quite simple. That's why I didn't choose for you all to do. All right, so if you have time, please actually go on and do the past year question. Now for next week, I will discuss past year question, but I need you to choose for me what is the past year question that you want me to discuss. I don't want to choose for you, okay? You choose for me is better, can or not? Now, one more thing is recently, like last 2 days, you see that I have posted my YouTube video to your group because I have used Movie Maker to cut my videos into small section, which is called bite size. So it's easier for you all to actually view and to use them. So these are the videos that I have here. Okay, let me see. So these are the videos that I have actually posted already, and all of them are maybe like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 18 minutes, all right, for different topics. So do you find that this is more helpful for you rather than to play the whole session? Can I get your feedback, please? I'll be doing this for all the revisions and post it in the YouTube for you to view. And please go and view them. And also, please put a like there. I would love to have the like there. And I know that you have actually seen it. All right. So far now, this gene expression video has got 13 views. Okay. And then the natural selection revision has got 35 views. So a lot of students are actually looking at this natural selection topic there. And I am making it even more attractive by putting the picture in front. Okay, so I hope that you take your time to view whatever lessons that you have not attended. All right, and please put a like there. I would love that. And introduce to your friends to view it. If your friends are doing A-levels of another class, it doesn't matter because I put in YouTube, it's public, anybody can view. Even your friends are studying A-levels in other colleges also, they can access to this revision YouTube, only revision, okay? The normal lessons, it will not be available, okay? They won't have to pay tailors to do that. All right, so that's all for today. If you have any question, please ask me, okay? Or ask for a consultation hour so I can do it for you. We can do discussion together. All right, so that's all for today. You have any feedback or not? Any request? No, So this way of revision is okay for you, So I will text you so that you tell me what are the past year questions you want to do, and then I will choose that and do for next week. You do first, and then we discuss. All right. Okay. All right. So see you in the next lesson, and bye-bye, everybody.